Israeli army went into the house. They separated the men from the women. So, like in that process in itself, in being able to separate men from women, it's telling in terms of the level of threat or lack thereof. And then 15 of the men in the home were shot by the Israeli army.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. Hunger haunts Gaza. This video came from the Twitter feed at Tom White Gaza. Thomas White is the director of UNRWA, the UN agency that helps Palestinian refugees. This is an UNRWA truck carrying some food in the midst of a desperate, immense crowd in a Gaza street. The UN says near 600,000 are in the catastrophe phase of hunger. The only worse category is famine. Trucks are filled with food and supplies on the Gaza border with Egypt, but Israel will only let in a small fraction of them. The Twitter feed Grannies for Equality noted how the picture above looks like the one in Syria from a few years ago when Assad was starving Palestinians in Yarmouk near Damascus, a picture that shocked much of the world. On January 2nd, the seats in the Bridgeport City Council audience section were filled, as the board was to take up a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. It was the third meeting where the public session was dominated by people insisting that Palestinians be allowed to live. These are some of the signs held at various points of the proceedings. As you've seen on previous shows, several of the speakers had direct experience of loss, having relations killed in Gaza or in the West Bank during Israel's latest war on Palestinians. We'll now have portions from some of the speakers' remarks.
28,000 slaughtered, yet you're silent. More than 10,000 innocent children, yet you're silent. I'll thank you when action's taken.
The people of Palestine and Gaza that are being impacted by this war are innocent men, women, and children, and more importantly, human beings, and shouldn't be pitied like animals or thought less than in order to be saved. Please vote to end this war, but to importantly cease fire immediately. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Dear Council members, my name is Aziz Siyal. I'm a board member of BICC located at 703 State Street, Bridgeport. I came from Pakistan in 1984 and settled directly in Bridgeport at Denver Avenue. I was a journalist, lawyer, and human rights activist in Pakistan. On my way to America, I was so happy to think that I was going to spend the rest of my life in a country that is a champion of human rights in the whole world. When I came here, I was further surprised to see that this great American nation not only cares human lives, but fights for the rights of the animals too. I never thought that one day the political leadership of this great nation will go against basic human values and will help a foreign nation with our tax dollars to kill innocent children of Palestine. Today, the whole world is crying for peace, but only our country, America, is using its veto power in UN and has become the main hurdle in stopping the genocide. The champion of human rights has become the main financer and supporter of a nation that has crossed all the limits of humanity.
I'm speaking in support of the ceasefire resolution because I have an obligation as part of my kinship with humanity and our planet to do so. For my love and admiration for Muslims, Gaza, and Palestine, but also for my love and respect for the Jewish faith. During World War II, my grandfather in the U.S. Army was sent into Auschwitz concentration camp to liberate the Jewish Holocaust survivors because he spoke fluent Polish. We've all heard the phrase "never again" summarize the lessons from genocide and anti-fascist sentiment. In part of my ancestral healing, I'm here to remind you that when we say never again, we mean never again for anyone. I need all of you here tonight to understand that Zionism is white supremacy. Zionism has nothing to do with the Jewish faith, protection, health, or safety of Jewish people. For every one Jewish Zionist, there are 30 Christian Zionists like President Biden. I need you to understand that Zionism is anti-Semitic, and I need you to listen to anti-Zionist Jewish people who have unlearned the brainwashing. Speak to those in Jewish Voice for Peace. Learn from Israeli peace activists in the group Standing Together who are protesting the occupation and Netanyahu, calling for peace and a diplomatic solution. Israel may have a right to defend itself, but it does not have a right to impose an occupation on people. If this was about Hamas or October 7th, the US and Israeli armies would have used special forces units to capture them and not spent 88 days continuously bombing innocent civilians.
Then let me read a letter that was sent to President Biden, who I voted for once, will not happen again, from a Palestinian civilian who has lost all his family in this war. Quote, "Thank you, President Biden, for providing," and you heard it correctly, he's thanking President Biden. "Thank you, President Biden, for providing $100 million in humanitarian assistance for the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank. This funding will help support over 1 million displaced and conflict-affected people with clean water, food, hygiene support, medical care, and other essential needs. However, we thank you more for funding every single bomb dropped on Gaza, which has caused the killing of over 20,000 civilians, which is 70% of those killed are women and children. More than 10,000 children were killed. Another 50,000 people in Gaza have been wounded, a death toll of 20,000 in the enclave, where the population is estimated to be 2.1 million, means around 1 out of 105 people has been killed. That means 1%.
Dehumanization, stage 4. Just because this is an international issue does not mean that it is not also a national, local, and community-based issue. The idea that this has nothing to do with us in Bridgeport is not only complicity in genocide, it is factually incorrect. We need the city of Bridgeport to help us call for a ceasefire because this genocide is happening to us. It is happening to the people behind me, it is happening to the people in front of me, it is happening to me too. Tens of thousands of people are being murdered on our dime, on Bridgeport's dime, in our backyard. Sikorsky is building helicopters for Israel to drop even more bombs on the families of people that live in Connecticut. The tax money collected from those families is paying for the bombs. My taxes and yours are being carelessly spent on a genocide when we have to fight and scrape to spend it on our own community. If you still think this is too complex an issue to take a stand on, or that you couldn't possibly know enough to disagree with what our government is enabling in other parts of the world, I'm sorry that you have been made to feel so disconnected and disempowered. With that expertise I told you about, I can confidently say it is exactly the kind of mindset such a government wants you to have. They want you to believe there is nothing little old you can do about a US-funded concentration camp in the Middle East, and they want you to trust that, of course, a democratic government like America's will always do the right thing. But democracy isn't just an inherent virtue that does good simply by being there. Democracy means that the people have the power, so it is actually on us.
With your support and vote for favor of ceasefire resolution, we will be closer to stopping the genocide against children, women, and seniors. I would like to leave you with a couple of questions. What is the use of the United Nations, international human rights, international law, World Health Organizations, and European unions if they haven't stopped what is happening in Gaza? Shame on them.
And also, I started this address by stating my beliefs in this system are forever tarnished. But if truth speaks to justice, and this council de-escalates, rehabilitates, and speaks out on behalf of the Bridgeport citizen, you not only be inspiring me, but others like me and younger people who are watching to give this thing you call a democracy a chance. Thank you.
When the council discussed the matter itself, one member of the council complained that the council didn't have the authority to vote on an international matter. But a distinguished ex-state senator, Ernest Newton, said this.
As a person who is a state senator, a state rep, city councilman, the legislative body, and we've passed similar resolutions like this before this council. We recognize, just like other councils around this country recognize, that we don't control the president, we don't control Washington, but we do have a voice.
That's right.
To quote and say kind of things, we do have the right. And I'm glad that there will be issues that come up from time to time that may not have anything to do with Bridgeport directly, but indirectly it may. That we have the right to voice our opinion as a body. And so I'm glad that this is before us. I'm going to say that murder from whatever side is wrong. But I cannot believe, and I said this earlier, that I watch the news every night and I see the death rates and the kind of things that go on. Just think if it was your family. Just think, if you lived over there. We're talking about a ceasefire from both sides.
To protect human beings.
That's what we're trying to do. And if you have any commitment, there's no way you can watch television and watch babies and men and women who had nothing to do with what happened in Israel. Nothing. But they're paying the price by dying. And so I want to commend this body for standing up, and all we're asking for is a ceasefire.
The measure passed overwhelmingly.
The motion passed.
In Sacramento, California, demonstrators took over the legislature, demanding that it vote for ceasefire.
I'm Amy Goodman. We continue our coverage of Gaza as we turn to California, where hundreds of Jewish activists and their allies shut down the California state capitol in Sacramento Wednesday during its first floor session of the new year to demand a ceasefire in Gaza. As As chants rang out, the activists dropped banners that read "No U.S. funding for Israel's genocide in Palestine." Another banner noted California taxpayers contribute some $600 million to U.S. military aid to Israel each year. The direct action was organized by Jewish Voices for Peace, If Not Now, and the International Jewish Anti-Zionist Network, among others. One of the protesters was a former Israeli IDF soldier, an Israeli Defense Force soldier, who will join us in a minute from San Francisco. This is Meital Yaniv addressing their fellow demonstrators.
My elders, state, family had meticulously taught me how to recognize genocide from infancy, how naked bodies get rounded up for torture and execution, how mass graves smell, how starvation and hate shapes a body, how ethnic cleansing martyred entire lineages and buries the wisdom of the land caretakers. The black and white images are now in color. The stories are live.
There's been a report of a face-to-face massacre committed by Israeli troops, the type where detained people are just lined up and shot down. Democracy Now! Interviewed an English Palestinian on January 5th. It was his family that was among the victims. Just before this section of the interview, Mohammed Ghalayini explained that 80 members of his family had been killed by Israeli forces in the last 3 months.
I think one of the most horrific incidents that really stood with us, though, was in late December. Well, on the 19th of December, we got the news that 6 of my cousins, along with their in-laws from the Annan family, so Ghalayini family and the Annan family, who were sheltering in the home of the Annan family in Gaza City, they'd been surrounded by the IDF for a couple of days, and then the Israeli army went into the house. They separated the men from the women. So, like in that process in itself, in being able to separate men from women, it's telling in terms of the level of threat or lack thereof. And then 15 of the men in the home were shot by the Israeli army, and then they also threw explosives into the rooms that the women were sheltering in, and many of them were injured as well. This has been documented by the Euromed Human Rights Monitor. It's also been a press statement was issued by the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, and the Israeli army has form when it comes to summary executions. They executed their hostages as they were walking towards them, bare-chested, waving white flags, and I'm fearful for everyone I know that's in Gaza from either meeting an explosive death or a death by trigger-happy genocidal soldiers who are like drunk, obviously, on the power that they are wielding.
Ghalayini was also asked about the revolting comments by the Israeli ambassador to the United Kingdom.
I wanted to get your response to Israel's ambassador to the United Kingdom, where you have dual citizenship, Tzipi Hotovely, who has openly embraced destroying the whole of Gaza. She made the comment during an interview on the London radio station LBC.
One of the things we realized that every school, every mosque, every second house has an access to tunnel. So this is, and of course ammunition.
But that's an argument for destroying the whole of Gaza, every single building in it.
So do you have another solution how to destroy the underground tunnel city, that this is the place where the terrorists hide?
So that's the Israeli ambassador to the UK. Can you first respond to Tzipi Hotovely?
Of course. Tzipi Hotovely needs to be expelled from the United Kingdom. She is a purveyor of fake news that is a way of manufacturing consent for Israel's genocidal actions, and the UK government needs to expel her as a diplomat. She is a propagandist, not a diplomat, and she is someone that is making the case for Israel to continue with this impunity in its war crimes, and it's all fake news with no proof. But like in the end, if you have a position of power and access to the media, then you're often unchecked and unquestioned. And unfortunately, not all media. I mean, I'm glad the presenter challenged her, but I don't know how far the challenge went in that piece. And ultimately, there's a lot of bad journalism going on, and I guess this is like one of the reasons why this is so important to have like independent media like Democracy Now!
Speaking of genocide, the Republic of South Africa filed proceedings in the International Court of Justice against Israel, charging it with genocide. The application seeks to order Israel to cease any hostilities in Gaza that could amount to breaches of the Genocide Convention, to offer reparations, and to provide for reconstruction of what it destroyed in Gaza. I'm going to just read part of it, part of the application that talks about intent. You know, the Israeli propaganda always talks about what happened to the civilians and excuses itself by saying that was not our intent. We were only going against the terrorists. From the application, on October 28th, Netanyahu invoked the biblical story of the total destruction of Amalek by the Israelites, stating, "You must remember what Amalek has done to you," says our Holy Bible, and we do remember. The relevant biblical passage reads as follows: "Now go, attack Amalek, and prescribe all that belongs to him. Spare no one, but kill all men and women, infants and sucklings, oxen and sheep, camels and asses." On October 12th, President Isaac Herzog made clear that Israel was not distinguishing between militants and civilians in Gaza, stating in a press conference to the foreign media, in relation to Palestinians in Gaza, over 1 million of whom are children, quote, "It's an entire nation out there that is responsible. It's not true, this rhetoric about civilians not being aware, not involved. It's absolutely not true, and we will fight until we break their backbone." The Minister of Defense said, "Gaza won't return to what it was before. We will eliminate everything." He also announced that he had removed every restriction on Israeli forces. These quotes of government or high-ranking Israelis demanding mass murder goes on for 5 pages, including the remarks of a 95-year-old Israeli veteran who had also taken part in the Deir Yassin massacre of 1948, who in October was recruited for the Israeli army to help with morale. This man, Ezra Yahin, said, "Be triumphant and finish them off and don't leave anyone behind. Erase the memory of them. Erase them, their families, mothers and children. These animals can no longer live. Every Jew with a weapon should go out and kill them. If you have an Arab neighbor, don't wait, go to his home and shoot him. We want to invade, not like before. We want to enter and destroy what's in front of us and destroy houses, then destroy the one after it." And that's what this man said, who is in the Israeli army. You can see the whole application from South Africa. The link is in the headlines section on thestruggle.org. Law for Palestine has a database of 500 instances of Israeli calls for genocide of Palestinians. And this on January 5th. There was a debate in the Israeli Knesset where one speaker said, "We cannot win this war if we don't destroy UNRWA, and this destruction must start now." He wants to destroy the UN agency that keeps Palestinians from starving to death. And any decent legislative body, she would have been booed and thrown out. And from the Twitter feed @RadicalBlockTLV, we learned about a brave demonstration in Tel Aviv by Israelis opposed to the war.
This hour, 4 Palestinian children will be killed in Gaza. Every 15 minutes, there is a child killed in the last 2 months.
That's our program for today. Use Bridgeport and Sacramento as your inspiration. This winter, bring protest indoors. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.